and persecution of opposition political leaders, as it were. If you look at what is happening today, the headlines in newspapers are not graced with developmental programs that will benefit the citizens. If you open a newspaper, it's Mwamba arrested, Nakacinda detained, Chilenje convicted. That's all that you've seen the past few years. Now, if you compare what is happening now with what happened in the past was totally different. There's a groundbreaking ceremony. President Lungu is commissioning the bottom road, the Chingola Solwezi Road, or Kazungula Bridge, or is commissioning works at Lusaka International Airport, or Livingston Airport, or there's a water dam, Kafulafuta Dam. That is what graced our headlines. Now, when you look at the two, you realize that the PF and President Lungu prioritized developmental programs. That is why that was what was gracing our headlines in the past. But today, the priority of President Nakacinda is to intimidate opposition political leaders. And the reason is simple. The UPND government, UPND leaders had no plan for this country. They never thought about governing this country. So what their plan now is to oppress and suppress the opposing voice, so that there's nothing else for people to compare with, as it were. But Zambians are not stupid. Zambians can compare the 3 years of the UPND in government and the 3 years of the PF in government, as it were. You find that the very offenses for which they are picking our people today are the same offenses for which they are compensating their people. Then you would wonder, because if this had happened to a UPND cadre previously, a UPND member, today they are being paid millions of kwacha for having been detained under these circumstances. Whilst on the other hand, they are doing the same to our members, as it were. I'm very happy, Chairman, Communication, that we've been vindicated by the UN report. The UN report vindicates us, because when we spoke previously about the intimidation, the constraints on the democratic space in the country, people thought it was mere politicking. But these are experts that have got presence in Zambia. They are not only doing desk reports, as it were. They've actually got people on the ground that have been there to verify. So as it is now, as a country, we are an embarrassment to the international community. Whilst we are going through so many problems, ranging from load shedding, poisoned mealie meal, poisoned maize, lack of food, as it were. All that people can read about Zambia is the oppression and the persecution of our political leaders. Our call to the president is that he must sit for a moment and just reflect. How can he put on the lens of an ordinary Zambian to try and understand how he is viewed as a leader, how his government is viewed? The PF government that he condemned so much actually performed 1,000 times better, as it were. Because whilst he spoke and condemned everything that they did, the people on the ground were able to appreciate. Because President Edgar Chagwa ensured that when we had drought in 2015, he realized that the small businesses like barber shops, saloons, workshops and so on were going to suffer. He went out of the way and ensured that he imported power. And imported power expensively. That is to the extent to which he could go to save the lives of the Zambian people. Running a country is not like running a business, where you have to post profit. You become so sensitive to the margins, the costs, and the benefit, as it were. A governance would speak to what we call social profits. The social profit is to be able to save lives in hospitals by supplying them with power. What does it pay a country to try and save money, fail to import power because you feel power is expensive, and yet people are dying in hospitals? We've got reports of people who are dying on hospital beds, not because they're supposed to die, but because there's no power. What will it pay a country for all the orders in all these markets, including Chilenje markets, closing up shop? They have no jobs. They were encouraged to start small economic activities. Now they can't trade because there's no power. I was doing my calculations. 3 hours of power per day translates to only 3 days of power in 30 days. So that's how, I mean, what responsible government can honestly do that? You do that, there's no announcement whatsoever. There's no position taken from the head of state himself to try and see how to save this country. And yet, they expect ZRA to go out there and collect taxes. Taxes from where? The businesses are closing, every other day. Yeah, so it's very unfortunate that our youths have been abandoned. These are the same youths that President Nakacinda promised. He said, just shout Bali, Chijob Muliwe. He later changed and said, no, you are lazy, start your small businesses. The young people went out of their way. They went and accessed loans and got some grants and started a business. But that business can't run today. I will take advantage of that to immediately call upon the president that all the youths that got loans through CDF must be forgiven. Those debts must be forgiven. It will be unfair for the president or the government to expect the youths to repay these loans, yet their businesses have been killed. So my call to the UPND government is that all those youths who access loans through CDF between 2021 to date should have their loans cancelled. It will not make sense to expect these youths to pay these loans as it were. They are the same loans that they had used to buy equipment which is not working today. Some of them, because of surges, they've actually lost their equipment as it were. So it's indeed very, very unfortunate that Comrade Nakacinda has to go through this time and again. Comrade Mwamba is facing similar charges as it were. He is fortunate that he's still out here to speak to the public as it was. So President Nakacinda, what the Zambian people want is not to see us taking interviews at police stations. We should be taking these interviews in front of a road that is about to be commissioned. We should be taking these interviews because some airport is about to be done. Some hospitals are about to be built, as it were. Some dams are being created. We haven't heard anything about the UPND policies to do with the revised policies in agriculture. They came in with what they call the Comprehensive Agriculture Support Program, CASIP. The Minister of Agriculture doesn't even understand what that is. We asked him in Parliament, can you explain how different this CASIP is from what we've been doing? So what we expect to hear from the UPND government going forward, can we know what plans they have in the agriculture sector? Can we know what plans they have in the energy sector? Can we know what they have to do with infrastructure projects as it were? Otherwise, it's unfortunate, but I'm very, very happy, Chairman Communication, that the UN report indicates us. What we've been talking about is what is captured in that particular report upon their expert findings as it were. So it's really sad that we're going through this as a country.
You can rush to see our brothers leave us.
Thank you.
Before they exclude you. And then, please.
In fact, I was going to even ask, how can a utility company, a parastatal like ZESCO, be advising people to invest in alternative energy when it's their core function to provide energy and provide power to the country? The Zambian government should be interested in investing in ZESCO so that they look at the alternative energy and provide that at an affordable cost to the members of the Zambian people. So it is most unfortunate. We are dealing with 3-4 days, sometimes 5 days of no power. How can anyone survive? Your fridges don't work, your freezers don't work, your food gets rotten. It's a very, very bad and very embarrassing situation. So the government must think of proper investment into the energy sector.
Thank you very much. Just speaking briefly to the UN report. The UN report, especially under the Human Rights Council, those special rapporteurs. The special rapporteurs were created for issues like this, where they are rapid, where human rights abuses and human life is at stake. Last month there was a report about Rwanda condemning President Kagame and his role in the war in the DRC. That is the purpose of those special rapporteurs. You've seen the recent reports about Sudan, wherever human rights are threatened. There's even been special reports against Russia over Ukraine. for Zambia to be listed
Imagine.
amongst, to have a special report out of 193 countries. For the month of September, it was Zambia that has been cited. It's really a sad day for ourselves as a country. Received a report they have. They had no choice. We need to remind Zambians that the Zambia multi-party state when he attacked through, a proxy, the Patriotic Front. So it is our local institution that raised that issue. Last followed. 12 NGOs led by NGOCC and Chapter 1 Foundation also raised similar concerns. Then the Church, Christian Council of Zambia and the Evangelical Fellowship of Zambia all talked about the harassment of the opposition, the issues of torture, and the abandoning of the issues of development to focus on destroying the opposition. They've all spoken about it. The UN is just like cream on this issue. They've just affirmed what the local entities have said. So when government denies the UN report, where were they when the church raised these matters? Where were they when Laz raised these matters? Where were they when the 12 NGOs raised these matters? Government must simply own up and promise remedy, because this has damaged us, like Ambassador said. Ambassador Sylvia Chalikosa, although she was a minister, she was also an ambassador. So she knows what she's talking about. Today we are afraid to be at SADC meetings.
Yes.
Now you have reports from the UN against us. See how far we have sunk as a country. Were these the international aspirations of Dr. Kaunda? No, not at all. You cannot celebrate Zambia's 60th independence anniversary, a Diamond Jubilee, under this cloud of oppression, of harassment, and of hunger. 6.8 million people face hunger in this country. And you have power being supplied by ZESCO 3 days in a month, because they've said they'll be supplying only 3 hours a day. So if you calculate the 3 hours by 30, it's just giving you 3 days in a month. You can't not have a country like this. In fact, probably the president should have even reconsidered his trip to China for the FOCAC meeting, owing to the various crises that the country is facing. This government would not have pushed the arrest of Nakacinda with a UN report hanging over their head. But as if to affirm the details of the report, they proceeded to arrest Honorable Raphael Nakacinda. So Zambians who keep on giving you updates, it's the second day of Nakacinda's detention, going into the third day, because looking at the time, they will clearly not give him bond and they will not release him today. So thank you. We'll give you an update much later.